Let's talk a bunch of different topics.
How'd her career get there?
This is a podcast with Lauren Asghari.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for listening. Hit that like button, leave a positive comment, or hit subscribe to get alerted when new episodes drop. All of this will help keep the project going. Thank you for your support and enjoy the episode. This is the Lauren Asghari podcast, How'd Her Career Get There? And my guest today is Kim McKay, who is the Assistant Secretary of Programs for the Maryland Department of Disabilities. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
I'm very excited for this conversation. We caught up very briefly before this, and I already love your energy. So I know that this is going to be a fun one. Let's start. Geez, you have such an expansive career and tons of accolades. Just to highlight a handful. Named by the Daily Record as a Maryland Top 100 Woman. That is something to obviously be very proud of. That is not an easy thing to be honored with. And then one that I just find fascinating and interesting, a Kim McKay Day, September 10th, 2015 in Howard County, which I just love.
It's so fun.
Yeah. So every September 10th now I'm going to think of you every day on that day.
Yeah.
And we're gonna in our write-up link all of the other accomplishments that you've had, because like I said, just such an expansive career and you've done a lot of things, and we had the opportunity to talk about a lot of it today. So before we get to present day and kind of what you're doing now and what inspired you to what you're doing now, give a 30-second background on what you were like as a kid, where you grew up, siblings, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. I have always been, and even as a kid, growing up in Howard County, I grew up in Columbia, and I think that really impacted my life tremendously when I think about it. Columbia is kind of a special place, known to be 57 years ago it was founded. I know that because that's how old I am. To be a place where everybody can come together and live in community and in harmony. And I am someone who had a mixed race family. So my stepfather's Black. I had siblings that my step siblings are Black. I have half siblings who are mixed race. So our family really fit the Columbia culture. And I didn't really realize how special our community was in Columbia and Howard County until I went to college and met people just down the road at University of Maryland. So it's not like I went to the middle of nowhere or somewhere. Not that nowhere is the middle of, you know what I mean. But I literally went 30 minutes down the road to college and found a tremendous difference in people's attitudes and things. And just having not come from an experience of growing up in Columbia. I was always that kid who was told on their report card, does their work, but needs to stop talking to their friends so much. I always had that. I never got that perfect ones on your behaviors. I always had the needs improvement in, not chatting with your neighbors as much. So I think that kind of continues. I still love, being around people and stuff, and very sporty growing up, loved playing sports, still love playing things as much as my knees, back, shoulders, elbows will let me. But still watch a lot of sports, very into it, and still athletic in that way, kind of.
Was it from your parents or from anybody growing up, a mentor, a teacher, anything like that? What was maybe one or two traits that you feel like you got from them that you carry with you today? And who gave those to you?
Yeah, definitely probably my parents. I'll do that one first. We grew up in a household where the dinner table was debate time. So we spent a lot of time discussing issues of the day or things that were happening in the world. And my father always took the opposite side of whatever the rest of the family said. So if we were all in consensus about something, he was devil's advocate all the time.
Coincidentally or intentionally?
Oh, intentionally.
Okay.
100% intentionally. to make us think about what we were saying, to make us defend our arguments, to make us think about things from other perspectives. So it was a really great trait. I mean, dinner didn't always end so well. People got a little upset sometimes. But I learned to be comfortable with that in a way, discussion and thoughts and ideas in that way. And so I very much value that still to this day. That's very important. My parents also were very much not the sayers, but the doers. And you can talk about something till you're blue in the face, but until you take a first step to do something about that it's just a thought in your head. And so that the real momentum, it comes from taking that first step. And so I really do value that as well, coming from that.
I love that. Love those. Let's talk a little bit. I'm gonna jump around a little bit for my normal format. Let's talk a little bit for starters about your role currently. So give an overview of kind of what you're doing in your career now, and then what really inspired you to get into the type of work that you're doing now.
Sure. So, like you said, I'm the Assistant Secretary of Programs at the Maryland Department of Disabilities. Fun fact, the Department of Disabilities in Maryland, we are the only state in the nation with a cabinet level policy-focused cross-disability policy agency, which we're really kind of proud of and sort of unique in that way. And it's kind of funny saying this as the Assistant Secretary of Programs. We aren't really a programs kind of department. We're really mostly focused on cross-disability policy. So like how other agencies work impacts people with disabilities. And are they doing things in a way that is for the mission of our state, creating opportunity for all, access for all, and choice for everyone. And so do people with disabilities have the same opportunity, choice, and access that everyone else has? And so there's not like just these things for people with disabilities. Everything is for people with disabilities, but they need to have access to it. And are we making policies in all the other places, health and labor and human services and transportation even, that make sense for people with disabilities as well? And people are kind of like, that sounds kind of weird, but it's a great place to be, that we can have an impact on just about everything across the board in state government. So that's kind of fun. So me personally, since I oversee programs, that includes things like all kinds of communications. So our website and outreach and events and press inquiries and social media and all that kind of stuff, as well as we do have some programs. So we have a robust constituent services program where we have folks that have had tremendous difficulty navigating other people's systems. And we kind of help guide folks through the myriad of things that can be confusing. We also have an attendant care program called ACP Plus. And so that program really provides a financial reimbursement for folks that need things, that little bit of help to go to work or school or access their community. And so for many people, they fall in between eligibility for different kinds of programs. And this sort of is a gap filler, if you will. So I don't really qualify for this employment help, but if I just had this one or this little bit of help like this, then I could work full time or something like that. So that's what that program does. So it's really unique in a way to the state and to our department. And we have a bunch of other programs that I manage and things like that in our department, but smaller things, not huge things like rehabilitation services or the Developmental Disabilities Administration. So anytime you hear the word disability in a title in state government, sort of people think it's us, but it might not be, because we're really that policy agency. I think our value really came to be demonstrated mostly during COVID, when everything was shut down and we had to pivot on a dime for so many things. And creating access for people with disabilities was such an important part of that. And having that cabinet level seat at the table when decisions were being made. So our secretary sat there and could say, hey, that drive-through testing site, remember when we did that? Drive-through vaccination site, how is someone who doesn't drive going to get there? How can somebody who is blind, are your materials in Braille? Do you have interpreters on site for ASL? How can we help you think through some of these logistical things? And I think, health disparities for people with disabilities is pretty well documented. And that was just one of those occasions where it was like having that cabinet level decision maker seat at the table representing people with disabilities was just really critical. So
how, I hope I'm not throwing a grenade into Maryland government as I ask this question, but I'm curious.
Well, bring them on. There's been so many. We would we're okay with that.
How does that from a, I guess I'm thinking jurisdiction or enforcement standpoint, meaning do you get resistance? I'm sure that you don't get overarching resistance from people. I mean, obviously any branch of or any area of government wants to be supportive for all Marylanders and, obviously including those with disabilities. But how does that, do you ever get resistance from other departments, and how do you kind of manage through that to make sure that the end, consumer of Maryland services, right? The folks with disabilities still get what they need?
Yep. Great question. I would totally agree with you in that we don't have resistance. That's not the right word. I think the right word is, we know we have to do that. How do we do that? It's a more of a, can you help us? Did I ask the right question? There's some fear of, oh gosh, am I saying the right words? Am I asking the right questions? Am I allowed to ask that question? So we help agencies work through that. And then of course there's always well, that's great, but how am I going to fund that? I would love to do this top tier thing, and that path to get there is just so big and so long, and that runway looks so long. How am I going to get this plane to take off? And so it's our job to kind of help make those baby steps in between. And here's what you can do first. And here's how, this is good. This is better. This is best. And so you don't have to be best right out of the gate. That's hard for a lot of people. They want to be, I want to do everything. How do we be perfect? Which is something, I think a lot of people struggle with, but agencies do too. And they want to make sure that they're providing services for everyone and in the best way possible. That's why people are in government, for service. And so it is a challenge, especially in tougher financial times. And the landscape between the federal government and state governments and local governments is very challenging right now. And so I think that, just helping, our role as an agency is to help other agencies take those first steps. And we sort of almost act like a bridge with the community and with advocates to kind of bridge the talk between where agencies stand and where the community wants them to be. And we can kind of be that pathway or that bridge that helps speak both languages and make sure that we are all flying in that same direction.
It's interesting when you just said it there, the people that get into, I'll call it public service, right? Or the government work. I feel like you hear a lot of things out there, right, about, and it's more on the federal government standpoint, I feel like, and maybe some in the locals, but, corruption or all of those things. And I think that there's actually not enough credit given at state and local levels of how not only important and impactful that work is, but it's almost like I think of it, I own a business, right? So I think of it as like closer to the customer, right? Like the closer that you are to your, your end consumer of services, which you get really at the state and local level. And I just think there is a tremendous amount of talent in the Maryland state government and Maryland local governments. And I always just admire folks who could use that talent doing other things, and they've chosen to dedicate it to public service and to help others, and then taking it a step further to help, in your case, folks with disabilities or any underserved community. What for you, give us kind of a backdrop, if you will, as to what inspired you to get into that work, and maybe starting before that, what type of work were you doing before and what made you make the transition?
So I come from a family of medical folks. Father was a physician. Mom was a nurse. And I knew pretty early on that that was not for me. um, yeah, I mean, bodily fluids and I are just not a good match. And so I thought, what else can I be doing? I grew up, I'm going to date myself. Oh my gosh. I grew up watching a lot of, one of my favorite shows was LA Law.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of crazy to say so long ago. And Ally McBeal. So I really thought I was going to be this dramatic courtroom lawyer who was going to like charge in and save the day. That's what I was going to do. I was going to this hard pivot out of medicine and health, and you people do that stuff. And I'm going to go wear great suits and talk to people and have dramatic events in courtrooms. And then I quickly realized that that's not what lawyers do all day. What they do is read and write a lot. And while that's great, and I have no trouble doing that, it's not what I thought the job was. So I ended up doing healthcare administration. So sort of kind of a public health. So how do I take this health experience of my family and, the environment I grew up in and do what I'm good at in administration and connecting people and stuff like that. So I did a lot of healthcare administration stuff and ran practices and networks of practices and help people make things more efficient and that kind of life. And was pretty good at it and enjoyed my work. And that was awesome. And my husband and I had we have two kids, and we had our second child, and he wasn't talking, as quickly as he should have. I'm going to backdrop this story with letting you know that my husband is a pediatrician. So, we're at the 9 or 12-month visit with a good friend of ours, obviously, in his practice, and doing the visit. And I'm like, oh, no, he's not talking like the sister does. The other one talked much faster. I don't know. The little mommy voice is talking to me. He's like, you're fine. You have two kids now. This one asks for a drink. You give them both, something at the same time. It's fine. He's a boy. They talk slower. All the things that you typically hear, or at least you did then. Mm-hmm. He's like, but if you want to, you can do the child find thing and have him evaluate. So we did an evaluation. That was great. They came out, did all the stuff. They call me and say, look, before the meeting, we'd love to send you the report. That's fantastic. I'm sitting here at work next to a fax machine. Remember those? So she said, okay, I'll send it over. We'll meet in a couple of days. And so rang, and the page came out. Another page came out, then another one, and another one, and another one. And it turned just like an 18-page report, which is not what I was anticipating for my kid, who was just a little bit of a slow talker. And it just went on and on about all the things that he was behind in, and that just freaked me out a little bit. And went to the meeting and got services set up for him because he was qualifying for some in-home services, which was great. This was the summertime, so we had a temporary teacher, like a summer teacher, was going to come and start the program. Wonderful. Loved my Howard County Public Schools service. Look at this. We're not going to wait till September. You're going to get started right away. This is fantastic. They're going to come to the house. Wonderful. I don't even have to go anywhere. Well, he was a little guy at that point. And this teacher came and worked with him for about a half an hour. And he was crying the whole time. And, my mommy heart is breaking and I want to go in there and fix it. But she's like, no, it's all good. They had the session. She comes back out of that room and she's getting ready to leave. And she goes, I'm so sorry about that, that he was so upset. She goes, but if someone had just told me he had autism before the visit, then I would have been a little bit better prepared. And I said, I'm sorry, say what? It was like, what? Him? Like what? It was very kind of, did I hear you say that? Right. And at that time, this is 29 years ago, so 28 years ago. So this is like, all in my head was Rain Man, right? And so that's not who he is. And so you're a little confused. So I called my pediatrician husband immediately on the phone, who was at work, and said, yeah, this is what this teacher said. He says, and in his doctor voice said, I have been trained at one of the best children's hospitals in the entire nation. I know what autism looks like. That is not autism. It's fine. Whew. Okay, good. I feel better. Life's great. I called my best friend because of what you do. Called my best friend. I should have said this also. My best friend at the time was a special education teacher. Let me preface, an early intervention special education teacher. So knew exactly what she was talking about. And I said to her, this woman came in here and she said this. And she, I'll never forget this moment. She said, she should not have said that to you in that moment. And I said, but you did not say that you didn't think he didn't have autism. You said she shouldn't have said that, which is different than she was wrong, which is what I wanted you to say. And I was like, oh, I need to take this. That was like I don't know, came in moment of your chest kind of like grumbles and you go, oh, a big thing just happened. It's funny that the big thing didn't happen when the teacher said it, but it happened when I got this, that confirmation, that trust that you have in somebody. And so I think about the years right after that and how things progressed. And yes, we have more evaluations and, we look at, it wasn't the traditional autism of 28 years ago, which is very true, had a different kind of diagnosis. It was a pervasive developmental disorder, which we now have a whole different way to look at the spectrum, which is fantastic and I think very important. But I say all that to say, I still, in those early years, laid awake at night, didn't know what to do, stressed out about resources. Am I doing the right thing? What more could I be doing? Where am I looking for answers? I need to connect to other people. Who else is going through this? Am I alone? Am I the only one that feels this way? What did I do wrong? Like all of the emotions. And that continued for years. That it wasn't just a once and done. And I was laying in bed next to a pediatrician who I could roll over when I had a question in the middle of the night and go, wait a minute, have we thought about this? Hey, wait a minute, have we thought about that? I could call my best friend at any time, day or night, and say, are we doing the right thing with this? Should we do this therapy or that therapy or what else should we be doing? And I think, what must someone who doesn't have that at their fingertips be going through, right? To feel like you would have to have an appointment for a thing or, to make an appointment and get it in, get all your questions and thoughts answered in that little window that happens. So it really changed completely the trajectory of my life because family support services in the disability field really became the thing. I just knew that what was happening wasn't okay. And if I felt that way, then, oh my gosh, what must other people be going through? And so a funny story, full circle, how this all comes to be. So now I am still working in healthcare administration, have this kid going through all this stuff. And my friend, the special educator, said, hey, we were talking to some of the leadership in Howard County about how we could change and support families better. And your name came up as, what's your friend, the not so crazy one, but she's a little crazy, but not too crazy. I mean, could we talk to her about what she would like to see instead? So I had a conversation with who was the director of special education in Howard County at the time. Her name was Carrie Wright, who is now the superintendent of Maryland State Department of Education, which is awesome. But she said, hey, we want to do family support better. We know we're not doing right by families. What could we be doing? So I had some ideas around how they could take some grants from MSDE that they were getting for different ages and combine them and make a center. And so she's like, that's wonderful. Can you start Monday? And I said, no, ma'am, I have a job. I have a thing. I have a career over here. I'm doing it. It's all great. She's like, no. How about Tuesday then? So you can tell people that you're leaving and you could start then Tuesday or 2 weeks from then, whenever you can start. And so I did end up leaving and taking this role on, taking kind of a step back and this just support role. And it was really, again, life-changing I think for all of us in a way. took that model, Howard County, and that's how kind of this career ping ponging happened. It sort of followed what was happening with my experience. And so where things weren't okay, I sort of tried to make them better for other folks. And so that really has become the guide star for my career in a way. It hasn't been about accolades or getting ahead or getting the promotion as much as it's been about systems change and where can I help make the system better? And where does it need to improve and how can I work on that? So, and then there's a series of a million jobs and things and stuff, which was very different then. I mean, I feel like people change jobs now and it's not seen in the same way as, I remember my mom going, there's so many you just keep changing jobs. How are you going to get a pension? That kind of thing, that anxiety. But it was really about following this personal mission of systems change. So
thank you for sharing that story. I'm sure that it's interesting. I get messages from people after doing these podcasts and how different things just resonate with different people. And I know that story and you sharing that is going to resonate with a lot of people. What do you say? I have a couple of follow-ups from that. What do you say to the parents out there that are going through early stages of anything difficult with their child in the disabilities community and are having trouble getting answers or feel, and I have two daughters and I have, knock on wood, not gone through anything like that. What do you say to those parents? Like, is there a hope lost? Is there, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but how, like putting back in that moment, like, what do you say to parents who are in that moment, the same moment that you were in when your friend said, she shouldn't have said that to you in that moment?
Yeah. I think the first thing I would say is breathe. You have to just take a pause, just take a breath, that everything's going to be fine. And even if it's not fine, it will be fine. And you'll make it through that moment. And whatever moment that is, and those moments come and go at all different times. And I think that the most important thing is to remember what they say on an airplane, that you have to put your mask on first. It's very important for parents and families and caregivers to make sure that they're taking care of themselves. It is very, very easy, and it is an incredibly slippery slope, especially for families and caregivers, and to always be pouring into someone else. That you do have to take a pause, gather the information, do the best you can the moment you have it, right? And do better when you know better. All these common isms that I'm spilling out here are all true, and they're all common things for a reason, because it matters, and it matters that you take care of yourself and give yourself a break and find spaces where you can vent in a way without judgment to someone. So if that's a best friend, if that's a support group, whatever works for you, if it's therapy, I don't care what it is. But you need it, whatever that is. And, fortunately for me, I had a best friend who understood the stuff pretty easily. So I could start talking in acronyms pretty quickly. And she knew more than I did and was that good sounding board. But I really found a lot of camaraderie in support groups and working in the nonprofit agencies and support mechanisms, the Howard County Autism Society at the time, which is now the Autism Society of Maryland. Just other folks who said, oh, I felt that too when that happened. Or, oh, yeah. I learned so much more about things from other families than I did from any specialist. And I don't knock healthcare providers, obviously, since I am married to a pediatrician. They're very important people, but they don't live it, right? And so even the folks at Kennedy Krieger Institute, which is, we have such a wealth of healthcare resources in this area, and it's phenomenal. We're blessed to have it. but they also don't go home with you every day. And so when you are dealing with the everyday stuff, you need someone that also deals with everyday stuff like that. I also think it's important, kind of like, to go back to career stuff, but it's important to have a family mentor too. Like as we think about mentorship is so important to have a mentor in your career and to mentor others. It's the same thing when you're going through this kind of stuff with families. Like I always wanted to find a family who was a little bit ahead of me, who in just a couple years that I could say, ooh, okay, tell me what pitfalls are coming. Help me understand, help me think about big picture things, because this moment feels life-changing. This decision I'm making about if it's a therapy, if it's which school to go to, which thing I should put them in, which activity, can feel monumental. And it was great to have older families that I could talk to that said, it doesn't work. You have no idea what's coming. And in a way that sounds like it would be awful, but it was actually very relieving in a way that every decision is not so critical. And then I was able to then turn back and give that to other families who were kind of behind me, right? And, oh, don't worry about that. That's not that. I know that feels important. That's not really important. Here's what's really important. So I think that is probably what I would say. Find some mentors, take a breath, and find some way to relieve your stress.
And what in your current work, obviously very purpose driven, very mission driven. What is the best part of your job, and what's the underbelly or worst part that nobody really wants to talk about?
Yeah, so the best part's easy. Every day is different. Every issue is different. That's fantastic for me. I love that we can be talking about visual access of websites and forms and documents one day, or 1 hour of one day, and then turn around and talk about disability employment services for people with disabilities, from working in state government and what they need to be doing better, different agencies, to how Social Security changes at the federal level are going to impact, everybody in housing. Affordable, accessible housing is such a critical thing. We don't even have affordable housing, and then to try to find affordable housing that is accessible for people with disabilities, that's just layers on layers of deep system stuff. So we can be talking about an individual constituent 1 minute and then a big system thing the next. We can be at a public event celebrating the Americans with Disabilities Act anniversary and then turn around and be in some work group with the IT folks or with community advocates. So the variety of what's happening and the variety of the kind of my day is just the best part and really works well with my personality. And then I think the worst part is probably, at least for me, the pace of change has been really hard to swallow. It is tough to go to work every day and still be talking about some of the same things that we were been talking about in meetings for 20 years. That can be hard. Government pace is slow, right? Change is slow. You're moving a Titanic. You're not going to just be like, we had a meeting. We've all decided. That's good. We're done. Put that one away. Check. So that's probably the hardest part, is not seeing the change you want to see as quickly as you want to see it. We do have a small but mighty team of advocates at our department that really understand that and pick each other up in those moments, where it's like, did somebody just say that it doesn't really matter if people can read the website? You kind of vent a little bit and then you just go right back to work and, okay, so that didn't work. What else do we need to be doing? How else do we need to address this? because we don't have unlimited funds and unlimited time to make these things. We know that the people that we are impacting makes a difference, like the work we're doing makes a difference in people's lives. And so we feel this urgency to fix things. And that urgency doesn't go away, but we do understand that to make real change, it does take some time. So that's the toughest.
What advice would you tell your younger self, like just coming out of college or early in your career?
I think it's probably to be a little more fearless. I hate talking about imposter syndrome because I feel like it's impostery to talk about imposter because there is. I think that I know what I mean. And obviously, I think it's real and all that kind of thing. It really just comes down to being fearful, right? It's fear of not being enough. It's a fear of not being, well, enough is really it, right? Not smart enough, not tough enough, not seasoned enough, not knowledgeable enough, not any of those things. So I think just being fearless is what I would tell my younger self, and to not be so afraid to make a mistake. That making a mistake is really a good thing. And I think that's really challenging for a lot of folks to think about in that way, but that's where all the growth happens. And if we want to talk about a growth mindset, then we have to be out here making more mistakes. And that's true in policies. That's true in the systems change work. That's true in writing something. That's true in a meeting. I think my younger self was very afraid to sound silly, to have that question in my head and be like, well, that's a dumb question. What if everybody else in this meeting already knows the answer to that question? And what I know now,
Everybody's thinking the question.
Nobody knew. They were all thinking the same thing. And nobody knew the answer to the question, but nobody wanted to be the one to say it. So I think that's really the thing, is being fearless to say the thing and to be the thing and to do the thing.
How do you define success?
Well, clearly it's not a lot of money since I work for the government. I really do think that success really is about being content. And that sounds kind of trite, but just finding the joy in your moments and in what you're doing, and aligning your life in a way that brings you peace. And that's sort of success to me. That does not mean that like every day at the Department of Disabilities is just roses and sunshine. That's not, there are days when you want to pull your hair out, because that happens everywhere. I think that what I mean by that contentment is that overall, right, what I feel like I'm using my gifts in a way that's meaningful for me and that aligns with my life and values and does good in the world. And that makes me very happy. That makes me very content. And I think that that's what success feels like for me.
That's very well said. Very well said. My final question before I get to rapid fire, which is unrelated to anything that we talked about. What is the best piece of advice that you've gotten in your career?
Ooh.
And then share a little bit of the circumstances around it.
Okay. Best piece of advice. This is going to sound terrible, but the best piece of advice was somebody said to me, no one's paying attention to what you're saying.
It's so liberating, though.
I say, what? Very important. No one's paying attention to me. And I think that it goes back to that imposter syndrome stuff, like that getting out of your own head and that mindset. I will stew in my own thoughts for days. I mean, I have a mind like an elephant. I will remember what happened 37 years ago, and when I said this thing and I should have said this, and somebody like did a snicker, and I'm still ruminating about it 37 years later about how this person thinks I'm an idiot. And this person has no idea probably who I am or what I said or when that meeting was. But that's the kind of nonsense I think that can happen at least in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And so I try to have taken that to say, oh, my words, actions, things aren't as important as maybe they feel in the moment. And so just releasing that and feeling like, oh, nobody cared that I made a mistake, or nobody cared that I, asked a silly question, or that everybody knew. Okay, well, now I know too. That kind of freeing feeling of, just being.
I always think of that. Have you ever seen the show Schitt's Creek? Have you seen that?
Yes. I wish I could go back and rewatch it without knowing the things. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
Just loved it. So yes.
So I always think of, there's a scene in there when David is getting his driver's license and his sister's there and he's like all stressed out about it. And her like main message to him is nobody cares. Like this driving instructor doesn't care. Like he's thinking about other things. And not that that's to say, and I always think of that, not that that's to say like, you say, not you, but anybody, you say something and like nobody cares, nobody's paying attention, but it is liberating to realize that most of the criticism is all in your head that you're giving yourself.
Yeah.
All upstairs, instead of everybody else is probably just like, oh, that's a good idea or that's not a good idea. And they're moving along because they're sitting and wondering how they're presenting themselves to the world.
Exactly. It's to say, and we're all just sitting in our own heads doing our own thing. And if you just can let that go. I mean, listen, I do think that the words in your head are really important, right? I think it's the stories you tell yourself about yourself and your circumstances define how you experience.
It's everything.
100%.
It's everything.
That is a core belief. And so I do try to make sure that those are good stories and positive stories. And I have been accused many times of being too Pollyanna and too, Kim, you're always giving people the benefit of the doubt. Sometimes people are just mean. And that's probably true. But my experience of them doesn't have to be mean.
Mm-hmm.
They can be mean all they want. But I can choose whether or not to stew in their whatever they've got going on, or I can choose to just move on and see the good in it and just take what I can from it, whatever lesson there is, and be about my day. So I sort of,
I would hug you through this camera if I could, because I so much agree. Like it's my, you're speaking to like one of my core things too, is just like, that everything in life is mindset, and it's the lens in which you look and the lens in which you see the world. And I always come from, with people that are like more difficult or more challenging or being jerks or whatever, I always come from a place of like a more level of empathy from the standpoint of, gosh, maybe they had a really bad morning. Maybe they had a bad day, or maybe they had a bad upbringing, or maybe like some circumstances that put them in a position. At some point as an adult, you have to take accountability for who you are in the world, right? So I'm not giving them a pass, but I always think if we just like had a little bit more empathy and a little bit more patience, and to your point, cool, they can act how they're going to act, but that's not going to affect me and how I show up in the world, because I hold myself to this standard, and I'm not going to be dragged down because somebody else is, wants to show up ugly that day. So I love that you said that.
And listen, I practice that to varying degrees in different parts of my life. People who have driven with me in the car know that I have a little, it's not road rage per se, but I do have choice words for people who do things that I think aren't okay on the road. Right. Then I say to myself, no, what I do say after I have had the choice words, maybe I will say, oh gosh, what if they're going to, that's what I the hospital really quickly, because who knows? So I okay, you know what? Maybe they got confused and forgot they had to go this way instead of that way. All right, I've done that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of with my first instinct. Why did I do get there?
We're all evolving creatures. Kim, I really, really enjoyed our conversation. I want to get to rapid fire, which is unrelated to everything that we've talked about. Just maybe 8 questions of random things, quite honestly. But before we do that, is there anything else that you want to talk about, or anything that you want to say that we haven't covered? Just want to give you the floor.
Gosh, what else? I think the only other thing I'd say, because I think we've touched on a lot of things, is that I don't want people to be afraid of a pivot. I think that we haven't listed all of my wonderful experiences and jobs and things, and I have done a lot of things. But I think that's all still important. And I think if you are at a point and you feel a pivot coming and it's true to who you are and it speaks to you as a person, that's okay. It's okay to pivot, whether that's a completely different industry, whether that's a completely different kind of job. Climbing the ladder or not climbing the ladder. Any of those things are okay. And that pivot is okay. I think that's really important. And I think having good mentors in your life is a really critical thing that I don't know that we talked about as much as important as I think they are. I've had some great ones from different industries and the same industry, to just have some different voices in your head.
Well, let's stick on, because I think those are 2. Let's take just another minute to unpack both of those. The pivot thing, I think, is, extremely important. I feel like sometimes growing up, we're kind of told this story of you study this if you go to college, right? You study this thing and you should know at 18 or 19, like what you want to do and what you want to go into. And like, you have it all figured out. And I feel like the secret that nobody tells people is like, you never really have it figured out. It's as much about discovering what you don't want to do and then adjusting until you eventually figure it out. So I think that pivot thing is a really, really good point that isn't talked about a lot.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that people feel like they get stuck on a track, right? You're a train, and that train is defined by these tracks, and only at certain stations are there ways to change. And that's just not true. You get to put the next piece of track down. And so you get to pick whichever direction that goes in. And it doesn't always have to go in the direction and in the timeline. That's the other thing I think people don't give themselves enough of a pass on. Why were you deciding at 18 what somebody is going to be doing for the rest of their life? Well, so I'm still trying to figure it out, right?
Right.
So, I'm running out of time, but I do still have some time if I wanted to do something else. I do think that that's really important, that, you don't have to go to college at 18. You don't have to do grad school right out of college if that's not what your thing is. You don't have to study medicine if that's what your family has always done. You don't even have to be a lawyer if that's what you've spent 18 years thinking that that's what you wanted to be. When you find out that that's not the thing for you, change it. And I think that's okay. I've had some jobs where I started a job and said, oh, crap. Oh, no, this was not a good choice. This was not the right choice. But I stuck it out for a little while and learned so much from those experiences about what does work for me, what doesn't work for me, what brings me joy, what does not bring me joy, as well as where I can contribute. And that, you still learn something out of that. And that's okay. And just make a new choice.
Yep. It is like, I just want to put it on a poster. It's like, just make a new choice. It is as simple as that. And not to oversimplify it, but it is. We put these complex thoughts in our heads about what society says is okay. But at the end of the day, it's your life. And not that you should just go, oh, that's hard, I don't want to do that, I quit, right? There is a level of, to your point, you can learn something all the time, and persistence and perseverance when things are difficult. But at the end of the day, be the director in your own movie. And if you want to pursue a different path with passion, it's just a choice. So I love that. What on the mentoring standpoint, why do you think that mentors are important?
Yeah. I saw it in my personal life, and I see it in my professional life. And I just think, I think connection with people is just so important. And whether and you need those connections that help talk to you about opportunities and things that you might not see. about yourself or about the landscape. I've had some mentors say, well, why haven't you thought about this? You know, what a different kind of career path. And I was like, wow, I can't do that. I'm not qualified to do that. I don't have a degree in that. And they're like, nobody does. Like, move on past that part. No one's asking you what you majored in. Like, past 24. No one's asking you what you majored in. And my husband says it all the time to people who talk to him about, I want to go to med school. I want to be a doctor. He's like, great, major in business. And they're like, what? And he's like, the medicine stuff, they'll teach you. You don't need that. You don't need, to major in something else. Major in something else that speaks to you. Anywho, I just think that that connection with mentors, they really do help point out your blind spots, whether that's in career or in your personality and things you need to work on. And having a variety of them I think are really important. I spend a lot of time, and probably my husband might think too much time, like at lunch or grabbing a drink or grabbing a coffee with folks, because I just feel like that's that connection, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's talking with folks that are a little different, that think differently than me, that do different things, that are on the opposite side of the political spectrum or work spectrum, or, different, come at a problem a completely different way. And just hearing from them all the time is just a really good thing, I think, for everybody.
Yeah. And I think you nailed it too. It's getting outside of like the areas that you're typically most comfortable in also, and going to, like, you could learn something about, I don't know, like a medical, like, I'm using this as a random example, right? You could learn something from a private sector company that you could make applicable in government, right? Or you could, I mean, you could, and vice versa, right? And so it's always interesting to not necessarily box it into, this is my lane. It's like, oh, how can I learn something and apply it to whatever it is I'm doing? So I love that. All right, here we go. Rapid fire. First one that comes to mind. All right, brick or stone?
Oh, stone massage. Hot stone massage is the first thing that popped into my head, so I'm going with stone.
Watching a movie, you going to the theater or you watching it at home?
Oh, my husband loves the theater. I love going to the only reason I like going to the theater, I don't like other people around me. I like to make my noises and do my things and say what I want to say. But the popcorn smell gets me every time. Like walking in that theater and smelling it. So I guess I'll go theater.
Theater. All right. Cold or warm?
You can always put more clothes on. So despite the fact that it's been very cold lately, I am going to say cold because you can always put more clothes on.
Gotcha. Go skiing or go for a swim?
Oh, swim in a pool, not an ocean.
That was my next. Mountain or ocean?
Oh, ocean.
Sun.
Twice on Sunday.
Sun or moon?
Sun at the ocean.
Okay. And last one, astronaut or deep sea diver?
Oh, I'm terrified of heights. So I guess I have to go deep sea diver.
All right. There you go. Well, Kim, thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed this conversation.
I did too. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing your story and your wisdom and your experience. I know it's going to be really valuable for our audience. So thanks again. And to everyone out there, we will see you next time. This is the Lauren Asghari podcast, How'd Her Career Get There? And again, my guest today was Kim McKay. Thanks so much. See you next time.
Let's talk a bunch of different topics.
How'd her career get there?
This is a podcast with Lauren Asghari.